Let's talk about royal icing consistency. You can use royal icing to pipe decorations, you can use it as a glue to hold together gingerbread houses, and you can even use it to decorate a cookie. The key to using royal icing is knowing the right consistency and how to adjust it. If your icing's too stiff, it can be pretty hard to pipe, and if your icing's too thin, your decorations might start drooping, and you do not want that. Let's start with stiff consistency icing. This icing is best for decorations that really need to stand up. Stiff icing is used for piping roses because those petals need to be upright. Some decorators also like stiff icing for gingerbread house construction because it's really sturdy. Since it has less water, it dries pretty fast, which is exactly what you want when you're sticking parts together. Our royal icing recipe is already stiff consistency, but if you're in a humid area, you might want to make this recipe extra stiff. To do that, you're going to add a teaspoon of confectioner's sugar, just a teaspoon at a time, until you get it to the right consistency. Next, we have medium consistency icing. Medium consistency royal icing is pretty similar to buttercream. It's pretty versatile. You can use it for a lot of things like borders and rosettes. When you pipe those pretty little drop flowers, using medium consistency is really important. I cannot stress that enough. Some of the drop flower tips have really tiny openings, and stiff icing will be pretty hard to push through. What's worse is that it can clog the tip pretty quickly because it dries so fast. In fact, if you're having problems with drop flowers, there's a really good chance that your icing needs to be thin to medium. To adjust a stiff consistency icing to medium, add 1/8 teaspoon of water for every ½ cup of icing. If your icing is still dry, you can add a little bit more, but just make sure you're doing it in small increments. Thin consistency royal icing is very different from buttercream. Thin consistency buttercream still has some body to it, but thin royal icing is pretty liquid. Thin consistency royal icing is mainly used for flooding cookies. Some people know it as cookie icing. It dries to a smooth, hard finish that looks almost like porcelain. To make your stiff icing thin, you're going to need some water and a lot of patience. You need to add 1/2 teaspoon of water to 1/2 cup of stiff icing to start. This will begin to thin down your icing, but not quite enough for flooding. You can keep adding water just a little bit at a time until you end up with a consistency of thick school glue, maybe just a touch thicker. I want to talk quickly about what liquid to use to adjust your royal icing. Water is the standard liquid that we recommend, but like buttercream, you can also use corn syrup to thin your royal icing. If your icing is the right consistency but it keeps breaking, or maybe you're having a hard time with decorations that have points, like the leaf for example, try thinning with corn syrup because it's going to give your icing just a tiny bit of elasticity that water won't. Royal icing thinned with corn syrup will take a little bit longer to set up compared to water. Whatever consistency you end up using, the most important thing to remember is that royal icing will set up hard when it's exposed to air. So remember to cover any open containers with a damp cloth, and do the same for your bags. Put a damp cloth over your tips so they don't get clogged.